So finally, what of radically changing the world? The horrors faced by people like Placide Simon or Dua Khalil, or I can't fail to mention people like Sean Bell, whose trial is going to be on the release on the Friday. Sean Bell, who was shot 50 times on his wedding day, and thousands of other black people who are criminalized and shot down in this country every day, not every day, every year. These horrors flow not from sin or a flaw in human nature. They flow from the way the world is organized under capitalism and imperialism, and from the morality engendered and reinforced by the workings of that system. And this brings us to a stark choice. Either we make revolution, either we seize state power out of the hands of those who currently rule, either we embark on the communist transformation of everything from the economic foundations of society to the ways that people relate to each other in every sphere, to the very ideas we have about what it means to be human, or, regardless of our intentions, we will ensure that the world remain as it is and grow worse, developing according to the drives of global imperialism. We have reached an era where a leap to communism is possible. This is not inevitable, but it is possible. The basis exists for humanity to move beyond all social relations of oppression, domination, and antagonism, where society's resources are developed to meet the needs of humanity as a whole, and to unleash individual initiative and individuality to a much higher degree in that context. Communism does not mean an end to contradiction, but it will mean that people need not use deadly force against each other to settle disagreements about the direction of society, and that there will be no organized social force that enforces ignorance. To be clear, I'm talking about scientific communism. I'm not talking about heaven or some utopia. Communism is made by human beings, beginning now as we are, even as we are transforming ourselves through struggle. And it requires, as its first great leap, revolution and a period of socialist transition and rule by the proletariat, led by its party, in which the class relations and social relations and ideas of the old society are uprooted and transformed, and the transition to a global communist society is fought through. There is not time, nor is it the focus of A Way with All Gods, to refute all the crude distortions and wrong-headed so-called theories about communism. But I have to say it's amazing what passes among people who pride themselves on intellectual rigor and indeed are rigorous on all kinds of other questions. Crude speculation, statistical approximations, and evaluation methods that no one would take seriously in their own professions, reliance on highly subjective memoirs by people with political agendas. These are somehow acceptable when the subject is communism. And I'm sorry to say that Chris falls into some of this. He roots himself in the errant notions of Hannah Arendt and other anti-totalitarian theorists, unable or unwilling to recognize the profound differences between socialist societies and those of the Nazis or of George Bush. He asserts grossly inflated numbers of deaths he says were caused by communism without any citation or explanation, and he does absolutely no grappling with the very real-world contradictions that these revolutions were made to solve and faced. The first wave of socialist revolution, that is in the Soviet Union from 1917 to the mid-50s, and China from 1949 into the capitalist coup in 1976, accomplished tremendous things. To survey just quickly what was done in China with a focus on the conditions of women, this was a country that was coming out of feudalism, dominated by imperialism and ravaged by Japanese occupation. Girls were often killed, sold, or kidnapped by landlords to be concubines. Foot binding was standard, meaning that the bones were literally crushed and the foot was bound up. It was ringed up into a ball and then bound so that a woman her whole life could not walk without pain. This was done to increase her so-called sexual appeal. And I have to say, it's only different by a degree from the high heels that women in this society are forced to totter around in. This was a common saying among Chinese peasants was, "A wife married is like a pony bought. I'll ride her and whip her as I please." This is the society, and this is why they made revolution. And with revolutionary power, they started to change all this. One of the first laws they passed was a marriage law that gave women the right to divorce, to inherit property, and banned child marriage. Foot binding and female infanticide were ended as mass phenomenon. And this wasn't just done from the top down. Women everywhere were mobilized. from the cities and universities to the factories and remote villages, to form women's committees, to enter political and economic life for the first time, to engage in culture and school, and to boldly challenge male chauvinism in all its forms. A new slogan was raised: women hold up half the sky. All this was taking place against a backdrop of an economy reorganized to meet people's basic needs. Literacy jumped from a mere 15 to 80%. Life expectancy was raised from 32 to 65 years old, and people around the world were righteously inspired and fueled in their own revolutionary aspirations by how everything was being remade. And yes, there was a revolution in people's thinking and morality. Serve the people, not get rich or die trying, or me and my comfort come first. Serve the people was the ethos that had initiative in that society. In addition, the arts and education system were radically transformed and opened up to masses of peasants and others for the first time, not by a top-down command, but by the masses of people being led to break down historic and oppressive divisions between those who've been trained to work with ideas and those who've been locked out of it. This reached its height during the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. At the same time, socialism has the birthmarks of the society it comes out of. And here again, I'd like to quote some correspondence from my comrade. To those who had raised that in societies we would consider to have been socialist, there was still a lot of selfishness among people and related values and behavior. In a general sense, this is true, but that was owing not to some innate or inherent and unchangeable human nature, but to the fact that these countries were not utopias, but societies marked and driven by contradiction, and more specifically, that they were societies in transition, and historically speaking, in the early stages of transition, from capitalism to communism. And they were still marked by extensive remnants of the previous societies from which they emerged, and thousands of years of tradition of class-divided societies grounded in exploitation and oppression, along with the ideas that rose in relation to, corresponded to, and reinforced this exploitation and oppression. This has nothing to do and nothing in common with Nazi Germany, a society that set about to regain its status as a capitalist power and did so through the means of wars of conquest, gross subjugation of women, and campaigns of racial and political extermination. And whatever errors had been made, none of the worst accusations against communism compared to what is not only condoned, but commanded in the Christian Bible. The real history of communism has been overwhelmingly positive, breathtaking, and promising. But more than that, Bob Avakian has taken responsibility and led others to take responsibility for deeply analyzing not only the accomplishments, but also the shortcomings of this history, and listening to the criticisms and interrogations of others. Because understanding and examining the real-world necessities these revolutions ran up against, and the theoretical frameworks they were operating from, and the political conceptions that guided them, is exactly what's necessary to do better. To read more about this, I recommend people check out bobavakian.net or go to revcom.us. So in wrapping up, let me make very clear, as part of the new synthesis Bob Avakian has brought forward in re-envisioning revolution and communism, we welcome and see as an integral part of any society we want to live in the role not only of Chris Hedges, but of people like him, people both religious and atheists, who courageously stand against injustices in the here and now, but are also engaging the big questions of morality, ethics, and politics, and who are going to and should continue to interrogate and challenge the revolutionaries, both now and after the revolution. To us, this is important because while we firmly believe we have the best method for getting at the truth and no reason to cover over truths, we recognize that we don't have a monopoly on the truth, and that leading a new society means not only meeting people's basic needs, but also opening up a process where increasing numbers of people are grappling with these big questions and making decisions about how to move society forward on the basis of hearing and considering and thinking through fiercely contending points of view. Also, opening up this process broadly in society is a key part of breaking down the divisions between those who've been trained to work with ideas and those who've been locked out of it, one of the great aims of the communist revolution. And I have to add that religion is one of the most pervasive tools in keeping people locked out of learning about the world, understanding its actual dynamics, its basis to be changed, and working in the realm of ideas. Further, it's essential that even as we continue to struggle over the role of atheism, God, and morality, and over what it will take to fundamentally solve the problems humanity faces, that we continue to join from our different perspectives together in the face of the truly monstrous crimes being carried out in our names right now, and that we continue to challenge others to join in building resistance urgently. So with that, I want to invite everyone here to get your hands on a copy of Away with All Gods by Bob Avakian. Take it home and start reading it tonight. It's time to unchain the mind and radically change the world. Thank you.